$417 million seized in a federal judge corruption raid.
Federal agents have arrested a sitting judge in Minneapolis this morning.
At 9:47 a.m. Central Standard Time, in downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota, federal agents executed what the Department of Justice is now calling the largest judicial corruption and narcotics seizure operation in the history of the Upper Midwest. $417 million. 5,500 pounds of fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. One federal judge. And a criminal network so deep inside the American legal system that it didn't just bend the law, it became the law. This is not about a rogue official making bad choices under pressure. This is about a sitting judge who turned a courtroom into a cartel command center, who weaponized judicial authority to shield one of the most violent drug empires operating on U.S. soil, and who helped transform Minneapolis and the Twin Cities region into a fortified distribution hub for narcotics flooding every corner of the northern United States. The raid happened 3 minutes ago in operational time. The fallout will last for years. And what they found inside the judge's private chambers, inside the servers beneath the courthouse, and inside a network of properties scattered across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Dakotas is going to rewrite everything you thought you knew about how deep organized crime can infiltrate the pillars of justice. If you think this is just another corruption story, stay with me. Because the next part is worse. 4:32 a.m. Minneapolis. The air is frozen. Fog clings to the streets like a shroud. The city is silent except for the low hum of diesel engines idling in the dark. No sirens. No flashing lights. Just shadows moving with absolute precision. FBI. DEA. ICE. Homeland Security investigations. U.S. Marshals. SWAT teams from 3 jurisdictions. Over 200 federal agents converging on 17 locations simultaneously across the Twin Cities metro area. This is not a standard raid. This is a surgical strike designed to dismantle an entire criminal infrastructure before the sun comes up. The primary target, a 3-story brownstone in the Powderhorn neighborhood. From the outside, it looks like any other residential building. Quiet. Unassuming. But inside, it operates as a regional drug fortress for a Somali-American organized crime syndicate with direct ties to the East African heroin trade and Mexican cartel suppliers. The structure has reinforced steel doors, encrypted communication relays, and a basement converted into a fentanyl pill press operation capable of producing over 50,000 pills per day. At exactly 4:33 a.m., the front door explodes inward. Flashbangs detonate in rapid succession. SWAT operators flood the interior in full tactical blackout gear, infrared lasers cutting through the smoke. Suspects scramble. One tries to run through the back exit with 2 duffel bags. He makes it 4 steps before he's on the ground, wrists zip-tied, face pressed into the frozen concrete. Inside, agents find 32 kilograms of pure fentanyl powder, another 18 kilos of heroin, industrial-grade mixers, hydraulic pill presses still warm from overnight production, and vacuum-sealed bricks of U.S. currency stacked floor to ceiling in a hidden compartment behind a false wall. The cash alone totals $9.4 million. But it's what they find in the back office that changes the entire operation. A laptop. Still open. Still logged in. And on the screen, an encrypted messaging platform with threads labeled by case numbers. Federal case numbers. Active case numbers. Drug trafficking cases currently moving through the Minnesota District Court system. And every single message thread is linked to one sender. One authority. One name. Judge Yassine Abdullahi Herd. A respected federal judge in the District of Minnesota. Appointed 6 years ago. Praised for his community leadership. Celebrated for his work with resettlement programs and immigrant advocacy. And according to the messages on that screen, the man personally responsible for coordinating the dismissal, reduction, or intentional mishandling of over 60 drug trafficking prosecutions in the last 3 years. The agents don't wait. They move to the next target. Simultaneously, at a luxury condo tower in Edina, one of the wealthiest suburbs of Minneapolis, another team breaches a penthouse suite registered under a shell company called Northern Crescent Holdings LLC. The condo is immaculate. Marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Somali art on the walls. But in the master bedroom closet, behind a biometric lock panel, agents discover something that doesn't belong in any judge's home. $2 million in cash, neatly banded and stored in fireproof lockboxes. 14 encrypted smartphones. A Glock 19 with the serial number filed off. And a steel briefcase containing hard drives labeled with coded file names, convoy routes, case diversion protocol, border entry windows, and Minneapolis Fortress Network. One agent opens the briefcase. Another begins imaging the drives on site. And within minutes, the scope of what they're looking at becomes clear. This is not just corruption. This is command-level collusion. 6:18 a.m. FBI Cyber Forensics Division, Minneapolis Field Office. Analysts are working in near silence, eyes locked on monitors displaying data trees that branch like digital spider webs. The encrypted hard drives seized from Judge Haird's condo are being cracked in real time using federal decryption protocols and brute force algorithms. And then the system unlocks. What floods the screen is a master network diagram. Codename, Operation Northern Gate. It shows over 40 shell companies, all registered in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. Logistics firms, trucking contractors, non-profit refugee assistance organizations, import-export businesses, restaurant chains, even a Somali cultural center. Every single entity is a front. Every single one is part of a financial web designed to launder drug money and coordinate the movement of narcotics across state lines without detection. But it gets worse. The network isn't just moving drugs. It's moving people. Migrant smuggling routes, human trafficking corridors disguised as legitimate resettlement programs, fake sponsorship documents, forged work visas, routes running from the southern U.S. border all the way up through Minnesota, then into Canada. And every step of the journey is monitored, taxed, and controlled by the same network that moves the fentanyl, the heroin, the cocaine, and the meth. The analysts dig deeper. They find transaction logs, wire transfers, encrypted payment confirmations. And at the center of it all, authorizing logistics, signing off on case dismissals, and coordinating protection for cartel members operating inside the Twin Cities, is one digital signature. Judge Yassine Abdullahi Haird. But he's not working alone. The files reveal a coalition. A deputy police chief in St. Paul. 3 ICE detention officers. 2 assistant U.S. attorneys. A Minnesota state senator. And a liaison coordinator inside the Office of Refugee Resettlement. All of them on payroll. All of them receiving monthly deposits ranging from $15,000 to $250,000, depending on their role and access level. This is not negligence. This is not a few bad actors. This is an engineered system. A shadow government inside the justice system, designed to protect, enable, and expand a drug empire. Operating under the cover of legal authority and humanitarian work. One lead analyst looks up from his screen and says it out loud, he didn't infiltrate the system. He became the system. The operation escalates. 7:04 a.m. Federal Command Center, Minneapolis. A massive digital map dominates the front wall of the room. Dozens of red markers pulse across Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Each marker represents a location tied to Judge Haird's network. Each one is a target. The operation commander, a senior FBI supervisor, addresses the room. We have full authorization. DEA, IC, marshals, HSI, state troopers, and local SWAT are mobilized. We hit every location simultaneously. No warnings. No delays. This network ends today. At 7:15 a.m., the second wave begins. In South Minneapolis, agents storm a warehouse operating as a methamphetamine superlab. Inside, they find 200 pounds of crystal meth in various stages of production, along with industrial chemical barrels, glassware, heating elements, and ventilation systems designed to mask the toxic fumes. 4 suspects are arrested on site. All of them have prior trafficking charges. All of them were released on reduced bail or dismissed cases signed by Judge Haird. In St. Cloud, a farmhouse on the outskirts of town is raided at the same time. SWAT teams breach through both the front and rear entrances. Inside, they find a human trafficking way station. 12 individuals, mostly women and children, are discovered locked in basement rooms with no windows, no heat, and minimal food. Agents also recover falsified immigration documents, prepaid phones, and alleged tracking payments for transport fees ranging from $8,000 to $25,000 per person. In Fargo, North Dakota, federal agents hit a freight logistics company that has been moving drug shipments disguised as agricultural equipment. They seize 43 kilograms of cocaine hidden inside hollowed-out tractor parts, another 60 pounds of fentanyl concealed in false-bottom cargo containers, and financial records showing over $14 million in laundered cartel money moved through the company in the last 18 months. In Superior, Wisconsin, near the Canadian border, ICE agents intercept a convoy of 3 SUVs attempting to cross into Ontario. Inside the vehicles, 17 individuals without documentation, 2 duffel bags containing $120,000 in cash, and 12 kilos of heroin packed in vacuum-sealed bags. The driver has a burner phone. The last text message he received reads, "Gate is clear. Go now." The message was sent from a phone registered to one of the ICE detention officers on Judge Haird's payroll. By 10:30 a.m., federal agents have executed raids on 41 locations. They have seized 5,500 pounds of narcotics, including fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine. They have recovered $417 million in cash, financial instruments, cryptocurrency wallets, and seized assets. They have arrested over 90 individuals, including cartel operatives, money launderers, human traffickers, corrupt law enforcement officers, and government officials. But the most important arrest happens at 9:47 a.m., inside the federal courthouse in downtown Minneapolis. Judge Yassin Abdullahi Herd is in his chambers, reviewing case files, when 6 FBI agents enter without knocking. He looks up. He doesn't run. He doesn't resist. He simply closes the folder in front of him, leans back in his chair, and says, "I assume you have a warrant." They do. And it's not just for his arrest. It's for the seizure of his office, his computers, his case files, and every piece of communication he's had in the last 5 years. Within the hour, forensic teams are pulling hard drives from his desktop, imaging his phones, and photographing every document in his chambers. What they find is staggering. Case files with handwritten notes in the margins. Notes like delay until next cycle, reduce to probation, and dismiss for procedural. Digital calendars that sync raid schedules with convoy routes, ensuring that drug shipments move through the Twin Cities on nights when law enforcement resources were diverted elsewhere. Encrypted emails between the judge and cartel liaisons, discussing everything from border entry windows to judicial appointments that could be influenced to expand the network's protection. And in one particularly damning email thread, Judge Hare discusses the creation of what he calls the Minneapolis Fortress model, a system where judicial authority, law enforcement corruption, and humanitarian infrastructure are fused together to create an untouchable drug distribution hub in the upper Midwest. He didn't just protect the cartel. He designed the architecture for its survival. 12:34 p.m. FBI headquarters, Minneapolis. Investigators are combing through seized servers and encrypted communications. They're piecing together the full scope of the infiltration, and what they're finding is a betrayal that cuts deeper than anyone expected. Over the last 3 years, Judge Herd's network compromised 17 law enforcement officers across 4 agencies. These weren't low-level patrol cops. These were sergeants, supervisors, detention coordinators, and internal affairs officers. They were paid to falsify incident reports, delete surveillance footage, delay arrest warrants, and leak federal investigation details to cartel operatives. One St. Paul police sergeant received $84,000 over 2 years to ensure that certain neighborhoods were not patrolled during late-night hours. Those hours coincided exactly with drug convoy movements tracked by GPS data pulled from the seized phones. An ICE detention officer was paid $35,000 per month to release specific detainees before their hearings, allowing cartel members with pending charges to disappear into the network and continue operations. A federal prosecutor received over $200,000 to intentionally mishandle evidence in 3 major trafficking cases, leading to dismissals that freed high-ranking cartel operatives who then returned to managing distribution networks across Minnesota and Wisconsin. These were not mistakes. These were transactions. And every single one was coordinated through encrypted platforms managed by Judge Herd's inner circle. One veteran FBI agent, a 23-year career investigator, stands in the evidence room staring at the wall of seized documents and says, "I've seen cops go bad. I've seen prosecutors fold. But I've never seen a judge build the machine." He didn't work for the cartel. He ran it. And that realization is what makes this case unprecedented. The scope expands. Federal analysts trace financial flows from the Minneapolis network to suppliers along the southern U.S. border. They find connections to Mexican cartel operatives linked to both the Sinaloa cartel and independent trafficking organizations operating out of Sonora and Chihuahua. These groups supplied the bulk fentanyl precursors and heroin base that Judge Herd's network converted into street-ready product in labs across the Twin Cities. From there, the drugs moved outward. Chicago, Milwaukee, Omaha, Sioux Falls, Fargo, Duluth, even into rural communities across the Dakotas and Montana, where fentanyl overdoses have spiked by over 300% in the last 2 years. Investigators also uncover shipping manifests tied to Somali port cities, showing how some of the drug money was laundered back overseas through fake export contracts for agricultural goods, textiles, and electronics. The money would be wired to shell companies in East Africa, then cycled back into the U.S. through real estate purchases, business investments, and charitable donations that gave the network a veneer of legitimacy. Judge Herd didn't just run a local operation. He built a continental pipeline. A system that connected Mexican cartels, Somali organized crime syndicates, corrupt U.S. officials, and legitimate-looking businesses into one seamless drug empire that operated for years without significant federal interference. Until now. The final piece of the puzzle comes from a locked file buried deep in the encrypted servers. It's labeled Phase 3 Expansion Protocol. And when analysts open it, they find a chilling blueprint. The plan was to replicate the Minneapolis Fortress model in 3 other U.S. cities: Columbus, Ohio, Portland, Maine, and Omaha, Nebraska. Each city was chosen because of its refugee resettlement infrastructure, its proximity to interstate highways, and its limited federal drug enforcement presence. The goal was to install trusted operatives into judicial or law enforcement positions, build the same financial and logistical networks, and create a national web of protected drug distribution hubs that could move narcotics across the country without triggering coordinated federal response. Judge Haird's network wasn't just operating. It was expanding. And if this raid had come 6 months later, the system might have been too embedded to dismantle. One counter-narcotics analyst puts it bluntly: we didn't just stop a corrupt judge. We stopped a blueprint for turning the justice system into a cartel franchise model. This is the cost of silence. This is what happens when power is trusted without scrutiny, when systems are assumed to be clean simply because they wear the right titles and sit behind the right desks. Judge Yassin Abdullahi Haired wore a robe. He swore an oath. He was given the authority to interpret the law, to protect the innocent, and to hold the guilty accountable. Instead, he became the guardian of a drug empire that poisoned communities, destroyed families, and trafficked human beings for profit. The fentanyl that moved through his network didn't stay in Minneapolis. It spread into small towns across the Midwest. It killed teenagers in Iowa. It killed mothers in Wisconsin. It killed veterans in North Dakota. And every single death can be traced back to a system that was designed not to stop the drugs, but to protect the people moving them. This story is not just about one judge. It's about what happens when corruption reaches the highest levels of authority. It's about the danger of assuming that titles equal integrity. And it's about the courage it takes for the honest agents, the honest officers, and the honest prosecutors to stand up and say, "Not here, not anymore." If you're still watching, tap like so more people see this story. Comment expose if you believe this kind of corruption needs to be dragged into the light. Share this with someone who needs to understand how deep infiltration can go. This is a fictional dramatization, but the threat it represents is real. The systems we trust are only as strong as the people who protect them. And when those people fail, when they turn their authority into a weapon for organized crime, the cost is measured in lives lost, futures destroyed, and communities shattered. $417 million. 5,500 pounds of narcotics. One federal judge. And a network that almost became untouchable. Today, it ends. Tomorrow, the trials begin. And the world will be watching.